Leia scrubbed the blood from her fingers like it didn't matter, like it wasn't there. The baby cried from the cradle, high and sharp, but she didn't turn her head. She kept working the rag into her palm, harder each time, water sloshing over the side of the basin and onto the warped floorboards. Behind her, the door creaked. She didn't look up. Micah moved quiet. Always did. He was already halfway across the room, folding the linen she left piled on the bench. Neat folds, 2 at a time. His sleeves were rolled, wrists bare and pink from the cold. "You touch my clothes again, I'll burn your hands off," Leia said, still facing the sink. Micah didn't stop folding. "Just folding," he said. "Baby's cold. Cabin stinks of milk." Leia turned slightly, her fingers dripping. "Ain't your house. Ain't your baby." Micah walked to the cradle. The blanket was his own, old wool, dyed a burnt orange shade that looked like rust in the firelight. He draped it across the baby, careful not to touch his face. He didn't speak for a moment. Then he said, "He looks like your brother." Leia turned fully, her wet hand clenched around the rag. "What did you say?" Micah didn't blink. "Said he looks like little brother." The rag slipped from her hand, hit the floor with a soft slap. The baby stopped crying. "You weren't there," Leia said, voice low, like a warning more than a memory. Micah looked at her now, really looked. "Not then," he said, "but I am now." The silence stretched. The fire crackled once and settled. Leia's eyes didn't leave him. She moved back to the sink, slower now, her steps even. The knife she'd used to cut root vegetables was still there, edge half buried in a dish towel. She picked it up, not fast, not careful, just lifted it. Micah moved to the chair beside the fire and sat. "You always keep it that sharp?" he asked. "I don't let things dull," she said. He leaned forward, elbows on knees. "I saw him once," he said. "Your brother. When I was small." "No, you didn't." "Down by the trading post," he said. He was sitting on the rail, swinging his legs, smiling. Then he was gone. Leia shook her head. He never smiled. "You sure?" "I was there." Micah studied the fire. "Heard the sheriff said he fell," he muttered. "He didn't fall. Said he hit his head on the rocks." She stared at him. "They all said that," she said. Micah nodded. "I know," he said. The rain started light, pattering against the tin roof in soft, hollow beats. The baby let out a gurgle, a half sigh, then quieted again. Micah stood and stepped to the mantel, picked up the small wooden figure carved like a horse. He turned it in his hand. "You ever name him?" he asked, nodding toward the baby. Leia didn't answer. Micah held the figure out to her. "I made this the year he died," he said. "Didn't know why. Just carved." She didn't take it. Micah set it on the edge of the cradle instead. "He don't need toys," Leia said. "He needs quiet. He needs something. Not from you." Micah walked back to the fire, sat again. "I'm not trying to take anything," he said. "You already did," she snapped. His eyes flicked to hers. "What?" "You walked in here like it was owed to you, clean like it was yours. Named the baby without permission. I didn't name him. You said he looked like little brother. That's not a name. It's a memory." Leia moved to the cradle. She adjusted the blanket, not because it needed fixing, but because her hands needed something to do. "He don't look like him," she said softly. Micah watched her. "Then maybe he looks like you." Leia blinked. "That's not better." The rain picked up. Outside, the wind rattled the side window. Micah glanced toward it, then back. "You always stay out here alone?" he asked. "Not alone," she said. He nodded at the cradle. "He don't count yet." She stared at the baby. "Then what does—" Micah didn't answer. The silence sat heavy in the room again. The fire popped, the wind sighed. Nothing else moved. Leia finally set the knife back on the sink ledge, blade still wet. She turned, wiping her hands on her skirt. Micah was already looking at her. "You staying?" she asked. "Only if I'm welcome." "You're not." He nodded like he expected that, but he didn't leave. She sat across from him, her arms crossed, jaw tight. You think just showing up means something, she said. It doesn't. I know. You think you can fix things. Talk through 'em. Fold sheets and wrap babies and pretend the well never filled with bones. I never said that. You didn't have to. Micah leaned forward. I came because someone needs to remember, he said. I remember. Then don't you want him to? She looked at the baby. His little fist twitched in sleep. He'll remember enough, she said. Micah nodded once. That's what I'm afraid of. She looked back at him, her face softer now. Just a little. You sleep near the fire, she said. You snore, I throw you out. Micah smiled faintly. Fair enough. The rain beat harder now. It would last the night. Leah stood, checked the window latch, and lit the second oil lamp. She didn't say good night. Micah watched her move through the house like a shadow that knew every creak in the floor. She paused near the cradle, looked down at the sleeping baby. Then she said, almost to herself, You say he looks like my brother. Micah's voice came soft. Yeah. Leah didn't look up. He never cried this much. Micah sat by the fire with a sliver of bone in his hand, turning the blade slow, gentle. The edge moved in tight circles, pulling curls of white off the end. Leah wiped the table again. Third time today. No dirt on it. Just needed motion. The baby cried steady from the cradle, like he didn't care who listened. You know they buried him with the governor's teeth. Micah said, voice low, not looking up. She didn't answer. Still clenched, he added. They say they had to pry his jaw open for the autopsy. Teeth didn't belong to him. Leah scrubbed harder. Her rag dry now, moving air more than grime. Town said your daddy was born choking on secrets. Micah said, maybe that's why you left. I left 'cause your kind put a cross in our yard, she said without turning. Micah didn't flinch. Wasn't my kind. Sure. He set the bone down and wiped his thumb on his shirt. Was his kind. The governor. The sheriff. Your mama's kind, too. Leah stopped moving. She stared at the rag. Let it fall to the floor. You don't know what my mama was, she said. I know she played quiet while they built gallows under the schoolhouse, he said. That count for anything? She turned. Her eyes were tired but not soft. You always talk like you've been here longer than you have. I've been listening longer than you think. He picked up the bone and carved one last line into it. A thin crosshatch band near the top. Then he held it up. It was a rattle, hollowed through, smooth edges, carved clean like it came from a child's hands instead of a man's. Made this from a sheep knuckle, Micah said. Used to find and buried behind a dye shop, all bleached out from runoff. Leah took a slow breath. The baby hiccuped, still crying. Micah tapped the bone against his palm. Do you even remember what he sounded like? He asked. Little brother? Leah stared at the rattle. He never made a sound. Micah nodded once, looked toward the cradle. He does, he said. Leah followed his gaze. The baby's fists were tight, face red, mouth open. He wailed like his lungs had just been invented. Micah set the rattle on the edge of the table. That yours? He asked. Don't start. Just asking. Not your business. Micah leaned back. Whole town says it's the sheriff's. They'd say anything if it gives them something to drink over. I'm not town. You sure about that? Micah looked at her. You think I came all this way to fold sheets? I think you came all this way to feel holy. He smiled, not kindly. There's nothing holy about this place. Leah walked the cradle and picked the baby up. He didn't stop crying, but his arms dropped a little. She held him like she'd done it 1,000 times, but never meant to. You give him a name yet? Micah asked. No. You afraid to? I'm waiting. For what? She didn't answer. Micah ran his thumb along the rattle. They used to name us after colors. Dyers did. First sons got names like Indigo or Sable. Girls got what was left. What were you? Dust. Leah blinked. That ain't a color. Was to them. Dust was everything left over. All the waste. The runoff. The stains no one wanted to fix. She shifted the baby to her other shoulder. He whimpered now instead of crying. Quieter. I think he's hungry, Micah said. He's always hungry. Good sign. Or curse. Micah looked down. I can take him a few hours, if you want rest. She laughed under her breath. You think I'd hand him to you? He shrugged. Don't see anyone else here. I don't need anyone else. Maybe not, but he might. Leah stared at the fire. Don't try to be my savior, Micah. I'm not. Then why are you still here? He stood and walked to the cradle, lifted the blanket, straightened it, careful not to touch her. My mama told me once, he said, power don't always scream. Sometimes it just waits. What's that mean? Means people like us forget we've got claws. I ain't forgotten. He looked at her. Then what are you waiting for? She didn't answer. Micah sat again. I had a brother, he said. He drowned in the flood near Split Bend. Sheriff said it was an accident. It wasn't. They found his coat in the church well. She was quiet. The wind pressed against the window. Micah turned the rattle once, let it roll on the table. It stopped pointing toward the door. I think your brother and mine would have liked each other, he said. Mine was just a baby. Still counts. She sat across from him, still holding the child. You think names matter? She asked. Names are stories. And what if the story's wrong? Then you tell it louder. The baby shifted in her arms. Quiet now, just breathing. You think he hears us? She asked. I think he hears what you won't say. She looked at the rattle. You gonna give that to him? No, I'm gonna leave it here. Let him decide if it's his. Leah nodded. The fire cracked. Micah leaned forward. You still carry it? She looked at him. The governor's letter, he said. She stood slowly. I burned it. Liar. She didn't smile. Micah stood, walked to the door. I'll chop some wood, he said. Storm's coming. Leah watched him step out. Wind pushed through the crack behind him. She looked at the baby, then at the rattle. You hungry? She whispered. He didn't cry. She laid him back in the cradle, covered him tight, then walked barefoot to the door, opened it, stepped into the night. Behind her, the baby stirred again, still crying. Leah knelt beside the old stone well, the rim cold under her hands. Moss had crept along the base, soft and slick, but she didn't notice. Her fingers gripped the edge as she lowered the rusted bucket down, the rope dry and stiff as bone. Each inch made her arms tremble, not from weight, but from memory. She didn't speak. The only sound was the creak of the pulley and the distant wind threading through the trees. Her breath hitched when the bucket hit water. It sloshed, then settled. She let it sit there, let the rope go slack. In her mind, a different sound echoed, claws sliding against wood, her mother's hands wrapped tight around something that didn't move. It had been just before dawn, years back. Her mother barefoot in the grass, carrying something small, too still, wrapped in a dish towel. She hadn't cried, hadn't prayed, just dropped it into the well, like it was something spoiled. Now Leah pulled the rope up. The crank groaned under her grip. Water dripped loud in the silence. As the bucket rose, it tipped slightly, spilling over the edge. She stopped cranking, blinked hard. Her hands shook. Then she saw it. Not a body, not bone, just a tangle of soaked baby clothes, twisted together like they'd been hiding in the dark for years. Pale cloth, one tiny sleeve, limp and fraying. She didn't touch it. Micah's voice came behind her, low and steady. He was buried clean. That ain't him. Leah didn't turn. You watching me now? Always been watching. She didn't move. The rope hung heavy in her hand, knuckles white. You follow me out here? Micah stepped closer. You weren't quiet. She looked over her shoulder. Didn't want company. You didn't say that. I didn't have to. Micah glanced at the bucket. Clothes been down there a long time. She nodded. You remember put him in? I didn't. Then who did? She stood slowly, dragging the bucket aside. Same person who put a baby in that cradle. Micah squatted near the edge. You think this is about guilt. It's not. No, it's about silence. Leah stared down into the well. I thought I buried all this. You didn't. You just walked away. She looked at him now, her voice flat. Why'd you come here? Micah sat back on his heels. Someone's got to finish what your mama started. She didn't start nothing. She just endured. Same thing, sometimes. Leah pulled the wet clothes out of the bucket and held them at arm's length. They dripped steadily into the dry grass. She used to say the well was cursed, she said. Said things drop down there don't stay dead. She right? Leah looked at the baby's shirt. She wasn't wrong. Micah stood. What do you remember? About the well? No, about that night. She didn't answer for a moment. The wind moved around them again. Distant thunder grumbled low. I remember she told me not to watch. Leah said it was a mother's burden, not a daughter's. Micah nodded once. I watched anyway. What did you see? She was quiet, didn't shake, didn't pray. Just dropped him in like he was part of the trash fire. He cry. No. Micah looked down at her hands. You think she hated him? I think she loved him too much. They stood in silence. Then Micah said, You ever ask her why? Leah's jaw tightened. She said, he didn't belong in this place. You believe her? Leah wrapped the wet clothes in her coat and held it close. I ain't used to. And now... She didn't answer. They started walking back toward the cabin. The trail was quiet, grass damp from the night air. Crickets had gone still. The sky was turning gray-blue. Not yet morning, not quite night. Micah kicked a stone out of the path. You think she thought she was protecting you? I think she thought she was protecting him. From what? Leah held the bundle tighter. From men like the governor. From men like my father. Maybe from something worse. You think this place does something to people? I don't think it. I know it. They walked in silence again. The cabin light came into view between the trees, flickering weak behind the curtains. Micah said, He's still crying. I know. You gonna name him? She kept walking. Why you care so much? 'Cause names give shape to things. Right now he's just a shadow. Leah stopped. He ain't a shadow. Then call him something. She looked at him, hard. You think naming him fixes what's broke? I think not naming him makes it worse. The wind picked up again. A gust. The trees shook, slow and low. Leah looked down at the bundle in her arms. I used to think names didn't matter, she said. Now I think maybe they're the only thing that does. Micah stepped closer. You give him one. He won't be just memory. I'm not ready. He nodded. Okay. They kept walking. The porch creaked under their feet. The baby's cries came louder now, sharp and real through the wooden walls. Leah opened the door. You coming in? She asked. Micah shook his head. Not tonight. She looked back at him. Why not? I got something else to dig up. What? He didn't answer, just turned and walked back toward the well. Leah stood in the doorway, holding the coat tight. Then she stepped inside and closed the door behind her. Micah dragged the rug back with one hand, revealing the trapdoor hidden beneath the kitchen table. The wood creaked under his boot. Dust rose like smoke. Leah stood by the stove, eyes locked on the square outline in the floor. Don't, she said. I'm not asking, he replied. He reached down, pried open the hatch. The hinges groaned. Cold air rushed up from the dark. Whatever you think's down there. I know it's down there. Leah's jaw tightened. Micah grabbed the lantern off the nail and lowered himself into the hole. She hesitated, then followed. The cellar smelled like old cloth and rotted cedar. Earth wet and heavy. Her boots hit the ground with a hollow thud. The light from the lantern cut across the space in slices. Shelves lined the walls. Crates, tin boxes, stacked jars filled with clouded water, and floating bits of something unidentifiable. Then her breath caught. Shoes. Rows of them. Tiny, perfect shoes. Baby shoes. All different colors. Stitched by hand. Each pair tagged with a strip of ribbon. A set of initials faded from age. Some were leather. Others cloth. Some were burned around the edges. Micah moved slowly, scanning the rows. She kept count. Leah turned away, hand covering her mouth. Why would she? She said it was a way to remember. He knelt near the front row, touched the smallest pair. Or maybe to forget. Leah backed toward the wall, found a chair, sat down hard. You okay? He asked. She didn't answer. Micah stood and moved toward the far corner. A small shape loomed in the dust, rocking slightly, as if it had just been touched. A child-sized rocking chair, paint peeling, fabric seat torn. It moved slow and steady back and forth. He pointed. That yours? She nodded. Mama called it a quiet chair. What did it mean? Meant I wasn't allowed to cry. Micah stared at the chair. You sit in it long? Every day from when I turned 4 to when I ran. The chair creaked louder now. Leah stood across the room, stared at the shelves again. Her hand hovered over one of the ribbon tags. She whispered, They ain't all ours. Micah looked at her. You sure? No. He moved to a wooden trunk under the shelves. Opened it. Inside were scraps of fur, dried stiff and matted. Animal skins, sewn into small garments. This where your mama kept the wolfskins, he said. Said she'd dress you in them if you ever talked out of line. Leah didn't blink. She did. Micah looked back at the chair, still rocking. She tell you what they meant? She said it was what women had to wear if they wanted to survive. He nodded. She wasn't wrong. Leah turned to him. You ever hear about the babies gone missing during the flood? Yeah. They blamed it on rising water. Said the river swallowed them. Micah stepped closer. You saying she brought him here? I'm saying something did. They both looked at the shoes again. You think your mama did this? He asked. She raised her with a knife under her pillow and a Bible she never opened. That a yes. I think she believed she was saving them. Micah said, From the town? From the men in it. They stood in silence, the cellar too still. Then a thud echoed above them, followed by a sharp cry. The baby. Leah spun, heart hammering. That wasn't the wind. Another thud. She rushed toward the cellar shelves and grabbed an old rusted pistol off the hook nailed to the beam. You even know if that thing works? Micah asked. Doesn't need to. She pushed past him, climbed the ladder fast. Micah followed, lantern swinging wild in his hand. Upstairs, the baby's screams cut through the air. Leah burst into the room, gun raised, breath ragged. But the cabin was empty. The cradle rocked hard, though no wind touched it. The rattle Micah carved sat on the floor beside it, split down the middle. Micah scanned the room, jaw tight. Someone was here. I didn't hear a horse. They came on foot. Leah grabbed the baby, pressed him to her chest. He kept crying. Micah looked at the broken rattle. They took something. Leah shook her head. No, they left something. Micah turned slowly toward her. You think they know about the cellar? If they don't yet, they will. He moved to the window, peered out. Nothing but trees and fog. You think it was hail? Maybe. You think he knows about your mama's ledger? She didn't keep ledgers. Then how'd she keep track? Leah looked toward the trapdoor still wide open, the darkness yawning below. She didn't need to, she said. They always came back. Micah picked up the broken rattle. Ghosts don't break things, he muttered. Leah whispered, No, but men do. The baby went quiet. Micah looked down at the rattle, one half carved, the other half blank. She never planned on stopping, he said. Leah sat down slowly, the baby cradled tight. I think she knew the town would never let her. Micah looked at the pistol in her lap. You ready to use that? She didn't answer. Micah walked toward the fire, stared into the flame. Rocking chair stopped, he said. Leah didn't look back. Good. Micah nodded, then said, We ain't alone anymore. Deputy Hale stood in the doorway like he owned the house, had held against his chest, boots wet from the morning mud. The wind blew through his coat, but he didn't seem cold. He glanced past Leah and spotted Micah by the fire, sharpening the blade of a carving knife against a stone. Heard the Dyer's boy was out here, Hale said. Leah didn't invite him in. He's not a boy. The governor's widow's worried. Hale said, stepping one foot inside. Said he's been stirring up memory. She should be worried, Leia said. He's her mistake, walking upright. Hale raised his chin. You threatening kin of the governor now? Micah didn't look up. No. She's reminding you whose land this really is. Hale smiled, thin and sharp. This land remembers a lot of things. So do we, Micah said. Leia stayed between them, one hand on the table, the other near the stove poker. You come here for a reason? She asked. Hale stepped inside fully now. Sheriff asked me to look into old matters. One's buried shallow. Leia's eyes narrowed. Which ones? Records show a boy died. No burial papers. No coffin. That ring any bells? Micah's hand paused mid-sharpen. He glanced at Leia. Leia didn't blink. That's 'cause your sheriff took the coffin for his own son. Hale's smile didn't falter. You sure you want folks remembering all that? Maybe they need to, Micah said, voice calm. Hale looked at him. You were just a stain on a bootlace when it happened. You don't know a damn thing. Micah stood. I know enough. Enough to know that when the flood came, not everybody drowned by accident. Leia stepped forward. You can tell the sheriff we're not scared of the dark anymore. Hale took a slow look around the cabin. His gaze landed on the cradle, then the corner of the rug that hadn't been laid back down right. He didn't ask. He didn't need to. You think memory's justice, he said. But it ain't. Justice don't take shape just 'cause you want it to. It takes shape when you stop choking it, Leia said. Hale shook his head. You think you're better than her? Who? My mama, your mama, the governor's widow. All of them. The ones who built the damn road you live on. I don't live on their road, Leia said. I live in what's left. Micah leaned against the mantel, hands loose. You done, Hale? Not yet. He reached into his coat, brought something. He pulled out a sealed envelope, yellowed, edges curled. He set it on the table without ceremony. What is it? Leia asked. Don't know, Hale said. It was locked in a drawer with your daddy's name scratched across it. Sheriff says it ain't his to read. Maybe it's yours. Leia stared at the envelope. Why now? Sheriff sick. Real sick. Doc says he might not see harvest. Men start asking questions when their time runs out. Questions like what happened to a baby buried twice. Micah asked. Hale didn't look at him. Questions like how many graves don't got names. Leia stepped closer. She didn't touch the envelope. You dropped this here to threaten me? I dropped it 'cause I'm tired of being the one holding the damn shovel, Hale said. Whatever's inside, that's your weight now. He turned and walked toward the door. Tell the sheriff, Leia said. Hale stopped. Tell him I'll come when the frost hits, just like Mama did. Hale turned his head just enough to show he heard, then walked out into the wind. The door stayed open a beat too long before Leia shut it. Micah walked to the table. You believe him? No. You gonna open it? She didn't answer. The baby stirred in the cradle. Micah moved him, adjusted the blanket. What if it's a lie, he asked. Then it's a lie with my name on it. Micah watched her. Sheriff's dying, he said. That means the town's shifting. It's always shifting, Leia muttered. It just keeps moving in circles. Micah looked at the envelope. What do you think's in it? A confession, a distraction, a lock of hair. Doesn't matter. It might. Leia sat down. The chair creaked. Her hand hovered over the envelope, but didn't lift it. When I was little, she said, Mama used to write letters to people who never got dead sisters, imaginary cousins, strangers. Said it helped her sleep. She ever write to you? She said, I was the one letter that never came back. Micah leaned against the doorframe. You scared? Of paper? She said. He didn't smile. She picked it up, ran her thumb along the edge. It felt thicker than it should have. More like a will than a note. More like a trap than a message. You want me to read it? Micah asked. She shook her head. No. If it was meant to hurt, it's mine to bleed from. Micah stepped away from the door, picked up a piece of kindling, set it in the stove. You ever think maybe justice ain't a shape? he asked. Maybe it's a sound, like a door creaking open, or a baby cry in a house that's too quiet. They stood in silence for a while. The envelope sat between them. Leah set it down again. Not tonight, she said. Micah nodded. Tomorrow, if the wind don't carry me off. She walked to the cradle and looked at her son. His eyes were open now, wide and still. Not crying, just watching. Micah said, he looks like he already knows. Leah didn't look up. Then he's ahead of me. Leah sat at the table, the envelope flat beneath her palm. It was soft from age, edges curled like it had been opened and sealed again more than once. The seal wasn't fresh. The ink had faded, and the paper smelled faintly of smoke and lavender, like her mother's room used to, before the floorboard buckled and the roof caved in. Micah stood by the stove, arms crossed. He didn't speak. She peeled the flap back slow, careful not to rip the paper. Inside, one sheet, folded twice. Her mother's handwriting sharp and clean, every loop deliberate. Leah read it in silence at first. Then her lips moved with the words. I named you Caleb, though they told me not to. I buried your name in my mouth for years. Her voice cracked, and she stopped reading. Micah straightened. Your brother had a name? Leah nodded once. She never said it. Not to me. Micah moved closer. Caleb? Yeah. He leaned on the table, eyes scanning the page. Why'd she keep that secret? Leah didn't look up, because if she said out loud, she'd have to admit he was real. And if he was real, then what she did was real too. She went back to the letter, her voice quieter now. They told me you weren't mine, that no one would believe me, that naming you would only make the pain worse. But I did, in my head. Every time I closed my eyes, you were Caleb. Micah whispered. She wrote this for him. Leah nodded. Not for me, not for the sheriff. Just him. Micah looked toward the cradle. Leah kept reading. If you ever come back wearing another face, listen for the cry. He'll sound like what you lost. Silence fell hard. Leah stared at the baby. He wasn't crying, just watching. His little eyes locked on hers, still and wide, as if waiting for something she hadn't figured out how to give. Micah's voice came quiet. You think she meant this baby? Leah didn't move. I don't know what she meant. She thought he might come back? She believed in things most people drink to forget. Micah sat across from her. You ever believe that? No, she said. Then softer, I wanted to. He tapped the edge of the table. You said she was cruel. She was. But she wrote this. She also threw him in the well. Micah didn't answer that. Leah folded the letter and ran her fingers along the crease. You think ghosts come back? I think guilt does. She wasn't guilty. You sure? I think she was tired. Micah watched her. So what's it mean now? I don't know, she said. Maybe nothing. Maybe everything. They sat still. The baby's breath was the only sound in the room. Micah said, if she'd told you his name, would it have changed anything? I don't know who I'd be if I grew up knowing his name. That's not an answer. It's the only one I've got. She stood and crossed the cradle. Looked down at the baby. He blinked up at her, not crying, not moving, just seeing. He looks different when he's quiet, she said. Micah joined her. He looks like he's waiting. For what? You. She stared at the baby. He ain't Caleb. No, but he might carry something. Micah said, we all do. Leah turned to him. You ever wonder why you showed up when you did? He raised an eyebrow. You think it means something? I think everything out here means something, whether we want it to or not. Micah looked at the letter in her hand. You gonna keep it? She nodded. Yeah. Where? She laid it gently on the edge of the cradle, not under the baby, just near enough he might touch it. Micah watched her hands. You think she ever forgave herself? No, Leah said, but I think she tried. He nodded slowly. Leah looked back down at the baby. What if she was right? About what? That he'd come back different. That he'd come back at all. Micah stepped back. You don't believe that. I'm not sure I don't. He didn't argue. Outside, wind moved through the trees, soft and constant. The kind of wind that didn't shake anything loose but reminded you it was still there. Leah said, "I was 6 when he died." Micah stayed quiet. She made me help clean the basin. There was blood in the water. She said it was normal. Said babies sometimes come out wrong. Micah's voice was low. She lied. "I know." He asked, "What did you do after?" "I stopped talking for a year. Whole year. Wouldn't speak to anyone." Micah looked at her. "And when you did?" I asked her what his name was. "And she didn't answer?" She slapped me across the mouth. Micah's jaw tightened. "So you stopped asking?" "Yeah." He moved toward the door, opened a crack. Sky's turning. Leah glanced at the letter one last time. The baby reached for it, not grabbing, just touching the edge. Micah said, "You think he knows?" She said, "He feels." Micah stepped out onto the porch. Leah stayed inside, watching the baby. The air smelled like old paper and firewood. Behind her, the house creaked. No one spoke. Micah crouched in the backyard, stacking kindling into a tight circle of old stones. Night hung heavy. The sky was cloudless, but there was no moon, just dark stretching out in every direction. Leah stood a few paces back, arms crossed, coat barely buttoned. The air smelled like dry bark and dirt. The baby had finally gone quiet inside. She could still feel the weight of him on her shoulder. Micah struck a match, held it to the edge. The fire caught slow, climbing to the bark with a low hiss. "They said your mama lit the fire," he said. "Said she went mad." Leah watched the flames rise. She was already burning before the match. Micah didn't answer. He reached into his satchel and pulled out a bundle wrapped in twine. Paper, thick and brittle. He loosened the knot, held one sheet to the fire. The words blackened fast. "What is that?" Leah asked. "Records," he said, "from the governor's safe." She moved closer. "What kind of records?" "Court statements, land claims, witness logs." He let another sheet go. It curled, split, vanished into the flame. "They lied," he said. "Said the fire started in the back room. Said your mama barricaded the door." Leah stepped beside him. Her voice was flat. "They found her on the porch." Micah nodded, because she was running from it. She stared at him. "You sure?" "I found the soil reports. Burn marks started on the north side. Outside, accelerant in the grass line." She shook her head slowly. "All those years." I thought she snapped. "They made sure you did." Micah fed more pages into the fire. "She kept saying they came at night," Leah said, "that they brought something to burn us down." She wasn't wrong. Leah dropped to her knees beside the fire, palm open near the heat. "And the sheriff?" He filed the report himself. Claimed faulty stovepipe. She glanced up. He knew. Micah's jaw clenched. He was paid to know. He reached into his pocket, pulled out something small, tossed it in. Leah heard the sizzle before she saw the shine. Metal twisted in the flames. A sheriff's badge. Micah's voice was hard. That fire wasn't hers. It was theirs, and they made you carry it. Leah whispered, "I was 10. I know. She made me sleep on the floor that night, said the bed would burn faster." Micah said nothing. The badge cracked, then folded in on itself. "I thought she was being cruel," Leah said, "but she was saving me. She was trying." Leah pulled a handful of ash toward her, let it sift through her fingers. "You think she knew it wouldn't change anything?" "She knew it'd bury her. And she did it anyway. Some people pick survival. Some people pick truth." The fire flared. A gust of wind kicked the smoke sideways. "You think the governor's widow knows?" Leah asked. "She signed half those papers." "She ever come out here?" "Not once." Leah nodded. "She sent Hale instead." Micah looked into the fire. "She's hoping we'll stay quiet." Leah said, "That was their whole plan, wasn't it? Make us forget who lit the match." Micah nodded. "And make sure no one asked where the burn started." Leah stood slowly, ash on her hands. "Well, now we know." Micah rose too. Knowing ain't justice. It's a start. The fire snapped loud, then dimmed to a steady crackle. Micah whispered, "They built a town on this." Leah looked at him. "Then maybe it's time we pull up the floorboards." Micah kicked a charred piece of paper deeper into the flame. "You ever think about leaving?" "All the time." "So why stay?" "Because my mama died here. Because Caleb never left." Micah looked over his shoulder at the cabin. "Because of the baby." Leah didn't answer. Micah said, "You think he's going to carry all this too?" "Only if I don't name it first." The fire hissed again. A sharp pop. The badge split clean in two. Leah whispered, "They wanted a story. We gave him a myth." Micah looked down. "You going to rewrite it?" "I'm going to burn what don't belong." She took a deep breath, then turned from the fire and walked back toward the cabin, ash still in her hands. The wind had picked up, moving the trees just enough to make them whisper. Inside, the room was still. The baby slept in the cradle, one arm stretched above his head. The rattle sat beside him on the quilt. It rattled once, sharp and sudden, though no one touched it. Leah paused at the door, looked at it, looked at him. Then she walked to the wash basin, rinsed her hands slow. The ash clung to her skin longer than expected. Micah stepped inside behind her. Close the door. He move? No. You see that rattle? I saw it. Leah dried her hands on her skirt. You think that means something? Micah stared at the cradle. Out here? Everything means something. Leah moved to the fire, added a log, watched the flame catch. Micah said, "We should be ready." For what? For the ones who'll come asking what we know now. Leah sat down. Let him ask. Micah stepped closer to the cradle. The baby didn't stir. You think your mama would have wanted him here? She didn't get a say. Micah nodded. Neither do they. They sat quiet. Outside, the fire still burned. Inside, the house listened. The rain tapped through the cracked ceiling, soft and steady. It ran down the wood in slow lines and pooled on the floor where the boards buckled near the hearth. Leah didn't wipe it up. She sat at the table, elbows on her knees, eyes locked on the floor like it might shift. The cabin creaked around her, familiar and tired. The baby slept in his cradle, wrapped tight in an old quilt. No sound but the water and the wind. Then she heard it, a whisper, low and sharp. Don't let them name him. Leah didn't move. Her fingers twitched. The words hung in the air, cold as the rain. She rose slowly, moved a corner near the hearth, dropped her knees, and pulled at the edge of a board. It gave with a dry groan. Dust curled up in her face. She coughed once, then reached inside. Her hand closed on something smooth, small, metal and leather. A locket. She opened it. Inside, a photo. Her mother, younger, mouth tight, holding a baby. The baby wasn't Leah. She knew that face. Caleb. Her throat tightened. She sat back on her heels, staring at the picture. Her mother had carved the date into the back, but half of it was scratched out. The other half read just 22. That was all. She closed the locket and held it to her chest. The rain picked up. Micah pushed the door open, water streaking down his coat. He didn't speak right away. Just looked at her, eyes narrowed. You find something? He asked. Leah stood. You hear her voice? Micah's face didn't change. No. She told me not to let them name him. Micah stepped closer, water dripping from his sleeves. Might have just been the wind. It wasn't. He nodded once, then said, I saw men on the ridge. Leah's voice dropped. Whose? Sheriff's. How many? 3, maybe 4. Watching. Were they armed? Of course. Leah, across the room, lifted the edge of the rug. The trapdoor stared back. You think they know? She asked. Maybe not what's under there, but they know you've got something they want buried. Leah grabbed the pistol off the shelf. She checked the cylinder. 3 rounds. Micah watched her. You plan on making this loud? I plan on making it hurt. Micah stepped toward the cradle. He cried when I left. He's quiet now. Micah looked at the baby. Too quiet. No, Just listening. Leah walked to the window. The trees shifted in the rain. No torches, no footsteps, just weight in the air. Micah said, "They won't wait long. I don't need long." "You sure?" She turned to him. "I'm not scared of them." "You should be. I've been scared my whole damn life. This is the easy part." Micah nodded. Leah picked up the locket again, pressed it into his palm. "If I don't come back." "Don't." "You keep it." "I said don't." Leah looked at him. "You don't get to stop me." Micah stared at the floor. "You're not your mother." "I know." He lifted his eyes. "Then don't end like her." Leah walked back to the cradle. The baby blinked up at her. His hand twitched. She said, "If they try to take him, I want you to run." "You think I'll leave you?" "I think you'll do what's right." Micah exhaled. "And what if what's right is staying?" She picked up the baby, kissed his forehead, laid him back down. "Then stay. But don't freeze." Micah looked away. "You always knew it'd come to this." She shrugged, felt it in my teeth. He handed her a coat, wind sharp. She slipped it on. "So am I?" They stood in silence a beat longer. Micah asked, "You want backup?" "No. Just cover." "Fine." She gripped the pistol, then turned to the cradle one last time. "He doesn't cry when I leave." Micah said, "He trusts you'll come back." Leah nodded, then opened the door and stepped into the night. The ground was soft from rain, but it wouldn't stay quiet. Not under boots, not under hooves. Leah crouched low in the grass behind the split rail fence, her breath steady, finger loose on the trigger. The sky hadn't decided whether it was night or morning. The air hung damp, thick with wood smoke. Somewhere behind the ridge, fire still burned from where they lit the barn to draw the men out. Micah knelt beside her, eyes locked on the brush up ahead. "You sure they'll come this way?" he asked. "They always come the same way," she said. "Same route, same thinking." Micah looked at her. "You still good at gut shots?" Leah didn't smile. She lifted the pistol, sighted the edge of the trail, never missed. They waited. A crow called out once. Then silence. The first man came through the break in the trees, moving slow, rifle across his chest. The second was close behind, eyes scanning, boots slick with mud. They didn't speak. Leah could see the gold trim on the second man's collar. Sheriff's men, still wearing pride on their sleeves. Micah gave the signal. Leah fired first. The second man dropped, his stomach torn open before his finger even reached his trigger. Micah shot clean through the first one's chest. The body fell face first into the wet grass. Two more came from the brush in a panic, shouting, firing wild. Leah ducked behind the fence post, waited for the pause between shots, then stood and fired. One bullet through the throat. The other man rushed Micah, screaming, blade drawn. Micah met him halfway, knife against knife. There was no talking, just grunts, sweat, bone. Micah slammed him into the post, blade twisting deep. Blood sprayed across the wood. Silence returned just as fast. Leah stepped over the bodies, pistol raised, checking pulses. Nothing left but meat and regret. Micah wiped his knife on a sleeve. Four. Leah knelt beside the man with the gold trim, pulled something from his inside coat pocket. A ring, thick, heavy, marked with the governor's family crest. She held it up. "This what they're carrying now?" Micah looked at it. "That's a message." "It will be." She walked to the last man they dropped, the one face down by the ditch. She rolled him onto his back, stuffed the ring between his teeth, then shoved the jaw shut. Micah raised an eyebrow. "That how you want it told?" They started with lies. Let him end with symbols. He stood beside her. "You reckon that's justice?" Leah stared at the blood pooling under the man's head. "No." "What is it then?" She holstered the pistol. "That's just the start. They didn't bury the bodies. Just dragged them into the ditch. Left them where rain would wash away the smell before buzzards got to it." Micah walked back to the horse, cinched the saddle tight. "You think they'll send more?" he asked. "They'll have to." Leah climbed up behind him. That's what we want. He kicked the horse forward. They rode along the old cattle path, away from the fence posts marked with blood, toward the heart of town. Wind picked up. Smoke carried from the barn, still burning, behind them. Micah said, "You ever kill a man before today?" "Not like that. Not that close. Not with my name on it." Micah nodded. They deserved worse. Leah didn't speak. He glanced back. "You all right?" "No." "Good." They passed the old mill, abandoned since the flood. Rotting signs still nailed to the fence. Micah slowed the horse to a walk. The courthouse was up ahead. Stone, proud, paid for in blood and lumber. Leah stared at it. "You sure about this?" "No." "You want to wait?" "No." She pulled her coat tighter. "Then let's not stop." They rode through the square. Empty, lights still off in most windows. Just a few old men on porches, eyes squinting through the dawn haze. Micah turned to her. "They're watching." "Let 'em." He guided the horse to the front steps. They dismounted together. Leah walked to the doors, hand still on the pistol. She didn't draw. Micah followed close. "You want to knock?" "They already know we're here." She shoved the doors open. The echo cracked through the hall. Inside, 2 deputies turned, startled, hands on holsters. Micah raised his voice. "Try it, and you'll lose more than your badge." They froze. Leah stepped past them. "Where is she?" One deputy swallowed. "Upstairs. With the council." Leah didn't wait. She took the stairs 2 at a time, boots loud, gun in her belt. At the top, the door to the chamber stood open. Governor's widow sat at the long table. Papers spread in front of her. Glasses perched on her nose like she was too tired to care. She looked up. "You've made a mess," she said. Leah stepped into the room. "Just cleaning yours." Micah came in behind her, quiet. The widow sighed. "You think this is how it works? Blood in the dirt, and suddenly history rewrites itself." Leah walked to the table. "No, but it stops pretending it never happened. You've always been dramatic. I've always been your consequence." Micah set a small folded cloth on the table. The widow didn't open it. Leah said, "That's your ring. Found it in your deputy's mouth." The widow's face didn't move. Micah added, "Don't worry. We cleaned the blood off." Leah leaned closer. "You want to bury another boy. Keep pushing." The widow looked past her, toward the window, then said, "You think people will believe you?" Leah stepped back. "I don't care if they believe me." She turned toward the door. "They'll see it." And with that, they left. The door swung shut behind them. Outside, the wind carried smoke through town. And for the first time in years, nobody looked away. The town hadn't changed much. Same crooked sign over the bakery. Same 3-legged dog sleeping under the bank awning. Same courthouse at the center, too tall for its own pride. Leah rode in slow beside Micah, her coat still carrying the smoke from the fire. People watched from windows, some from porches. No one waved. No one called her name. They just looked, quiet like guilt, suspicion in their eyes, but no surprise. Micah leaned over. "You want to go around?" "No." "You sure?" "I've waited long enough." They dismounted at the courthouse steps. The stone was stained from years of water and spit. Leah stood still for a second, hand resting on her saddlebag. Micah stayed close, eyes scanning the square. Across the way, the governor's widow sat stiff-backed on a bench. Lace gloves, dark dress, hands trembling just enough to see from a distance. "She's crying," Micah said. "She should be." Crowds building. They always come when there's blood. Leah stepped up the first stair, then another, her boots heavy against the stone. Murmurs rippled across the square. A few gasps. One child clutched her mother's skirt, pointing. The mother pulled her back. Halfway up, Leah stopped, turned toward them. "You let them bury babies and name streets after the men who did it." The silence broke. A wave of whispering, some looking away, others frozen. A few faces hardened. One old man removed his hat. Leah kept going. The double doors of the courthouse opened before she touched them. The sheriff stood inside, boots wide apart, one hand on his belt, the other resting on the butt of his revolver. Micah stepped in beside her. "She's not alone this time," he said. The sheriff looked them over. "You think you scare me, girl?" Leia didn't blink. "No, I think I remind you." He scoffed. "Of what?" "Of what you let rot." She walked past him without waiting for permission. Micah followed. The sheriff didn't stop them. Inside, the floor smelled of lemon oil and old sweat. The wood panels creaked under their boots. Leia led them straight to the long desk where the town record sat. She didn't speak, just pulled the stained bundle from her coat. Baby clothes, dried blood, water damage, threads pulled and torn. She set them on the sheriff's desk. He didn't touch them. "What is this?" he asked. "You already know. I want to hear you say it." Leia looked him in the eye. "This is what you buried. This is what you took from a mother and dressed up as duty." He stared at the bundle. His hand twitched. Micah said, "You remember whose coffin you stole?" The sheriff turned to him. "You watch your mouth." "I ain't scared of you either." Leia stepped forward. "You think the town doesn't know? You think you can hold a badge long enough to rewrite what happened? You think fire eats truth?" He said nothing. "You covered it all in ash, but you left footprints." The sheriff's jaw worked. "That baby in your cabin." "Say his name." Leia snapped. "I don't know it." "Exactly." She reached out, lifted the baby clothes again, and set them gently on top of the town ledger. "These belong in your records," she said. "We don't record ghosts." Micah stepped closer. "Then maybe it's time you learn how." Behind them, the doors opened again. The governor's widow stepped in, veil lifted, her face pale and wet with tears. Leia didn't turn. The widow said, "You think grief belongs to you." Leia said, "I think silence belongs to you." The widow stepped forward. "What do you want?" Leia turned to face her. "I want it written down. I want names put to what was done. I want the wells marked, the graves counted, the blood measured. And then I want you to live with it." The sheriff shifted his weight. "You won't change anything." "I already have." The room fell quiet. Micah said, "You hear that?" The sheriff looked confused. Micah nodded to the window. "That's what guilt sounds like when it loses its boots." Outside, the square was full. People pressed in, some leaning forward, some whispering, most watching. Leia turned back to the desk. She pulled the ledger forward, flipped to a blank page, took the pen from its cradle, wrote 5 words. Caleb, buried twice, survived once. She shut the book. The sheriff stared at it. The widow looked away. Leia said, "Now it's written." Micah whispered, "Let's go." They walked out together. Through the doors, down the steps. The crowd parted. No one spoke. Some nodded. Others turned their backs. But no one looked away. The cabin door creaked as it shut behind them. Wind had followed them in from town, curling through the rafters like it still wanted to listen. Leia hung her coat on the hook, the scent of courthouse dust and gunpowder still clinging to the sleeves. She stepped out her boots and walked toward the cradle. Micah stood just inside the door, silent. He didn't move past the threshold. Didn't need to. He'd followed her through fire. Now he waited. The baby stirred beneath the quilt. His fingers flexed, then stilled again. Leia crouched and lifted him gently. His body was warm, heavy, real. His eyes blinked open, not afraid, not confused, just present. She held him close, breathing him in. "You don't belong to them," she whispered. "Or to ghosts." Micah stepped forward now. Slow. "You naming him?" Leia looked up. Her face was clear. "Caleb's buried. This one's Eli." Micah smiled, soft at the edges. "Strong name. Got his own breath." Leia nodded. "And he'll keep it." Micah walked to the hearth, lit the fire without a word. He moved like someone who knew the shape of the house, even if it had changed on him. Leia sat down with Eli in the rocking chair near the window, the same chair her mother never sat in, the one she kept covered with a quilt for years, as if afraid of what it might remember. You think it's over? Micah asked. No. You want it to be? I want him to never know what we had to do. Micah stirred the fire. You think that's possible? I think it's necessary. She looked down at Eli. His hand gripped her finger. He'll ask one day. Micah said, I'll tell him. Leah said, everything. No, just what matters. Micah sat on the floor near the fire, his back against the wall. You think the sheriff will step down? I think the town already did it for him. And the governor's widow? She can cry all she wants. The street signs will rot anyway. Micah chuckled. You're colder than you look. Leah glanced at him. You don't know what I look like. I do now. They sat quiet for a while. The wind outside softened. The house felt heavier somehow, like something had settled. You ever think about leaving? Micah asked. I used to. And now? Leah looked around the room. I think this is the first time it's mine. Micah nodded. Because you named him? No, because I named myself. He leaned his head back. That what you're doing now? She adjusted Eli in her arms. I stopped being her daughter when she lit that fire. I stopped being his sister when they buried him with lies. But now, Micah finished for her. Now you're somebody's mother. She smiled faintly. Yeah. Micah looked toward the trapdoor. You think it's quiet down there? I hope so. You want me to check? No. He nodded. Then I won't. Leah stood slowly, carried Eli back to the cradle. The quilt rustled as she laid him down. He blinked once, then closed his eyes again. Micah rose to his feet. You need rest. You staying? He looked at her. You want me to? Just a night. Micah pulled a blanket from a shelf, laid it out near the fire. Leah sat by the cradle, hand resting on the side. You scared? Micah asked. No. Liar. She laughed under her breath. A little. That's all right. The fire cracked once, soft. In the cellar below, the rocking chair gave one final creak, then stopped. Leah stood by the well with the tin can in her hand. It was dented, black at the edges, filled with what was left of the baby clothes, the court papers, her mother's letters. Ash curled up in thin trails when the wind caught it. She stared down the mouth of the well, dark and bottomless, the same way it had looked when she was 6. Only difference now was she wasn't afraid of it. Micah stood a few paces back, quiet, holding a bundle wrapped in muslin. His boots were muddy. The hem of his coat was burned from the fire they lit behind the shed the night before. Leah said, I ain't clean. Micah didn't move. She tilted the can and let the ash fall. It caught the wind in pieces, some landing on her boots, some drifting into the well. But I'm clear, she finished. Micah stepped forward and held out the bundle, found one more. She didn't ask how. She took it with both hands, unwrapped it slow. Baby shoes, tiny white, leather cracked with age. The ribbon was still tied, initials faint but there. Ciel, they weren't her brothers. She didn't know whose they were. That made it easier. She walked to the fire pit, knelt down, tossed them onto the coals. Flame took them fast. No smoke, just heat and crackle and gone. Micah crouched beside her. You think that was the last of them? I don't want to find out. They sat there while the shoes burned. The wind shifted. The air smelled like cedar and salt. Micah asked, You think it ends? Leah picked up a stick, stirred the ashes. Not for them. And for you? She looked back at the cabin. The smoke rising from the chimney was thin now, lazy. For him? She said. Yes. Micah nodded. The ground was damp from the morning frost. Crows circled up high, but they weren't watching, just passing through. You sleep last night? Micah asked. Little. You dream? Not this time. Micah stood, brushed dirt from his knees. You want help patching the roof? Maybe tomorrow. They started walking back to the cabin. The grass crunched underfoot, brown and brittle. Micah held the gate open. Leah stepped through, looked down at the fence post where she'd carved her brother's name years ago. The rain had almost erased it. She didn't touch it. Inside, the fire crackled. Eli slept in the cradle, his hand curled near his mouth. The rattle sat beside him, untouched. Quiet. The cellar door was closed. Had been since the last night she'd gone down there. Micah stood by the hearth. You gonna tell him everything? When he's ready. You think he'll ask? Wouldn't blame him if he didn't. Micah watched the flames. What if he does? Then I'll tell him his name was his, and no one else's. She walked to the cradle, tucked the blanket tighter around Eli's shoulders. His chest rose and fell steady. You leaving soon? She asked. Micah looked at her. You want me to? I didn't say that. I'll stay till the thaw. Leah nodded. Good. The clock on the mantel ticked, but the hands hadn't moved in years. No one cared. Micah said, Town's still quiet. They'll stay that way. You sure? No, she said, but I'm ready if they don't. Micah reached into his coat and pulled out a worn patch, the sheriff's old badge, warped from a fire. He held it up. You want this? Leah took it, looked at it, ran her thumb along the bent edge, then dropped it into the fire. They both watched it melt slow. No words. Smoke curled from the chimney as the wind picked up. The sky turned from gray to something close to blue, but not quite. Leah stepped out onto the porch, arms crossed, eyes on the horizon. Micah followed. She said, Let the rest burn. And they stood there, not watching for anyone this time, just standing, just still, just done.